Welcome, St. Edward's University students and all internet users alike. My name is Natani Bolani, and I've been moderating panels for about 5 or so years now, which is my main reason for being here today. My colleagues and I are here to discuss the severe implications of internet regulation and the pros and the cons and the stigmas attached to the controversial idea of internet regulation in a time where society is heavily dependent on the internet and the technology and the millions and millions of information that is available on the internet today. The question is, who controls the internet and who should control the internet, and is the internet something that should be controlled? Illusions of the Borderless World by Jack Goldsmith is a great example about the fate of our physical selves. We learn of Google's struggles with the French government and Yahoo's capitulation to the Chinese regime, of how the European Union sets privacy standards on the net, and of eBay's struggles with the FBI and trusting them with the privacy and severe fraud implications that are often associated with the company itself. In a decade of events, the original vision is uprooted as governments time and time again assert their power to direct the future of the internet, the destiny of the internet in the future, and how this will be reflected in the interest and power of nations and conflicts among these nations. As for our panelists today, to my right, I have Lorenzo Rubio, Executive Assistant Director for the Cyber Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have Svetoslav Granier, United States Congressman and Yale University alumni. To my left, I have Cindy Castillo, Chief Marketing Officer at Facebook and friend to Mark Zuckerberg himself. And I have Luis Mendoza, a highly acclaimed professor of Comparative Media Studies at MIT. To lay the ground rules down, each panelist will be given a minute and a half to respond to the questions that I will ask them before politely being interrupted. Panelists are not allowed to interject their fellow panelists without my permission, and all questions from the audience will be taken at the end. To begin, let's start with the first question. Mr. Rubio, what is your stance on internet regulation and why?
Well, as Natania said, my name is Lorenzo Rubio, and I am for internet regulation. Why? I've been working now for 7 years in the cyber department of the FBI, and since the moment we started, we had in our minds one phrase, which, by the way, you can find on our website. It's, we humans are building our worlds around wired and wireless networks. The question is, how are we going to work together to defend them? I know some of you might be fine sharing your names and your date of birth in the internet, and that's probably that doesn't harm you, but the rest of us are. We share information in the social networks today, such as Facebook, like our phone number or addresses, which can lead us to our wireless websites, or we pay our bills and have our bank account numbers there, which will lead us to our online banking, where we might have our PINs. Why do I say this? Well, online banks say that they state that they have very secure websites, which is true, but it wouldn't be the first time someone overcomes that security. On November 2008, 3 hackers worked together to overcome that security, and they robbed $9 million from 2,100 ATMs, around 280 cities. How was this possible? Well, they raised the limits of the credit card holders, then took their PINs out of the online banking, and with a group of thieves, robbed all the ATMs. I'm not saying that you cannot use your Facebook or other social networks, but you must be aware of the threats of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubio. Next, Mr. Granier, what is your stance on internet regulation and why?
As Natania said, my name is Svetoslav Granier, and I'm neutral for internet regulation because I could see how we as a society, we come to communicate with each other globally around the world, and we do not want to be outsourced by the government when we communicate. According to the online magazine PCMag.com, withholding information that is posted by other people is considered to be a breach of human rights, and it can only lead to the ignorance in the society. In the business world, the internet regulation would allow the internet non-regulation would allow the expenditure of jobs and innovation and the increase of productivity. Also, not regulating the internet allows us the free flows of ideas and commerce, which are the core principles that people around the globe highly value. Other benefits of non-regulatory internet is the inability of the government to intervene in the websites that people access on a daily usage.
Thank you, Swetislav. Next, we'll see what Ms. Castillo feels about internet regulation.
Thank you, Natanya. My name is Cindy Castillo, and I am strongly against regulating the internet. According to InternetSociety.org, internet is defined as the worldwide system of interconnected networks and computers, and allows collaboration and interaction between individuals regardless of their demographic location. As human beings, we have a natural tendency to communicate with one another, which can explain our heavy usage of social networks such as Facebook and Twitter and all that. Because of our communicational needs, we were able to develop technologies such as the telephone, the television, radio, and other communicational tools. And the internet today is a widespread information infrastructure. It was created from the bottom up, influenced and powered by us as individuals, and is now one of the strongest communication mediums out there. Working on Facebook, I have experienced or witnessed the increased utilization of social networks. Back then, MySpace was the Facebook of the era, and the numbers of their users is not compared to the Facebook users we have now. And this increase is due to our generation and our communication needs. And regulating the internet would take back our reason for creating this communication tools. So that's why I'm against regulating it.
Thank you, Ms. Castillo. And next we'll hear from Luis Mendoza.
Thank you, Natanya. As she said, my name is Luis Mendoza, and I am against the regulation of internet because it is unconstitutional. As American citizens, we all have rights, such as the freedom of speech and the freedom to receive information and ideas freely and openly. The regulation of the internet would directly conflict with these constitutional rights. And this freedom of speech, such as all freedoms, have their limits, which is why we already have targeted cases of infringement in place. But we cannot take prior restraint towards regulating the internet, such as blocking an entire website without such as a legal proceeding before we do so. This is a form of censorship without due process, and it is a pattern we've seen throughout history, such as in the 80s when the movie industry tried to kill the VCR because they saw that as a tool for piracy. Or in the 90s with the MP3 player. That was tried to be regulated because they saw that as a tool for piracy. YouTube is still facing lawsuits over piracy claims. But the natural tendency for an industry is to try and kill innovative technologies that disrupt their current business model or disrupt the way that they usually do things. When in reality, if they left these technologies unregulated, it will benefit the world much more quickly and much more rapidly than if they were regulated. The fact is that regulation will kill innovation and future companies such as the next Facebook or YouTube before they ever get started. And that is why I'm against the regulation of the internet.
Thank you, Luis. Now we'll move on to the next question, which is how would major websites be affected by internet regulating legislation such as SOPA? Mr. Greenyard, can you please answer this question?
Of course. Major websites such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Yahoo would be regulated by legislation such as Step Online Privacy Act. Is that if these websites regulate, they have contain copyrighted material that is owned by property owners. And for example, if the user on YouTube posts a material that is not his own and that it's illegal, And what the government will do is they will outsource the user from the website, and they will erase the material that he or she has posted. Another example of outsourcing the illegal material would be, for example, if you play a game on Facebook called Farmville, and if you start creating the same game on a different website, and if the government finds out that this game has been created on another website, they will erase that game, and they will place charges against that user who posted that game on a different website.
Thank you, Swetozar. Mrs. Castillo, how would major websites be affected by internet regulating legislation such as SOPA?
Well, regulating the internet will decrease the flow of communication overall. Social networking is known to increase the communication all across the world, strengthen relationships through networks, and makes it easier for people to share ideas and information. According to socialnetworking.org, 60 million Americans use the internet for help with major life issues such as looking for a new job, searching for new places to live, finding business reviews, and so on. In addition, 59% of students report using social networking for educational purposes. I have used Facebook before to communicate with group members on previous group projects, and I feel like it's the fastest and easiest way to communicate with people nowadays. In the business setting, marketing has increased their brand awareness through advertisements on these social networks, and regulating the internet will decrease our accessibility to information, communication, and ideas overall. So that's why I'm against it.
Thank you, Mrs. Castillo. The next question is, what should internet users be aware of when using the internet? Ms. Mendoza, what is yours?
Well, internet users should know that, as I said before, they have freedoms such as the freedom of speech, which allows them to post freely on social networking sites such as Facebook, Twitter, or online forums and chat boards. They also have the freedom to receive information and ideas, so they are allowed to view other people's posts on these websites without regulation. And the internet is one of the greatest mediums for the free flow of information ever created. And the capacity for the internet is only limited by those who use it. So there's an entire recreational and educational value in the internet that is basically free, that everybody should be allowed to view without regulation. But there are tools already exist to surpass these regulation laws that are already in place, such as China and Kuwait, and they're free and they are easily accessible, and they do not require any computer sophistication to understand, yet alone use. So if we see the regulation of the internet, more of these technologies will start popping up and spreading around, and people will find a way to surpass the firewalls that are put in place to stop them from viewing censored things that are regulated by the government or whoever regulates the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Mr. Rubio, what should internet users be aware of when using the internet?
Internet users should be aware of a lot of things, but especially internet fraud. And in internet fraud, we should pay special attention to business and investments. By business, I mean buying and selling on internet. I'll give you some tips on how to do that transaction safely. First of all, we should look up for any information we can find on the internet about the other part of the transaction, either we buy or we sell, and feedback, history, everything we can. Second, payment method. We must try always to pay with a credit card, since if anything goes wrong, we can always dispute the charges online. And last but not least, actually the most important one, we should never give our social security number online or a driver's license unless we want to get our identity card. Investments, that's a more risky one. We invest more money in internet than on businesses, online business. So I'll give you some tips, but it doesn't assure you a good investment, although it will help you on fraud. First of all, don't be amazed by fancy web pages. Everybody can do a fancy web page, so just focus on information about the business you want to invest in. Search for history, last transactions they did, if the investment is going to be good, that kinds of things. And last, pay special attention when investing in outside your country, businesses that are from other part of the world. With this, these tips will help you to avoid fraud, but we won't assure you that you won't get fraud on the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubio. To wrap up our panel, here's a recap of what the panel's stances were on internet regulation. Lorenzo Rubio is for internet regulation because it would infringe on citizens' constitutional rights. Svetoslav Grenier is neutral about internet regulation because there are beneficial aspects to both sides of the argument. Cindy Castillo is against internet regulation because the internet facilitates the lives of millions of people across the world, and it needs to remain an easy tool to use. And lastly, Luis Mendoza is against internet regulation because it would infringe on citizens' constitutional and limited rights. To restate Lorenzo Rubio's position, I mistakenly, I got that wrong. His position was that he is for internet regulation because of the crimes that are committed against people on the internet. Now, thank you everyone for coming to the panel, and we would like to take questions now. Yes.
Lorenzo, when you say you're for internet regulation, does that mean you're against the internet?
The question was, Lorenzo, because you are for internet regulation, does that mean you are against the internet?
That's a very good question. I suppose most of you will have the same problem. Ask yourselves the same thing, and definitely no. I enjoy very much the internet. I don't have a Facebook account due to job security, but I do have a Twitter account, and I read fascinating things from other people and institutions in there. I also have an online banking where I pay my bills at, and I save a lot of time and some money. But I'll do all these things in a very safe way. I always follow the tips I stated before. Every time I get into a website, and I'm always aware of malware and viruses. In other words, I enjoy very much the internet, but in a safe manner. Thank you.
And any other questions?
How does internet regulation specifically affect social networking sites like Facebook?
The question was, how does internet regulating legislature affect specific social networking sites?
Well, it affects it in many ways, but on a more personal level, let's say you would want to post a picture on Facebook or Twitter. The process of posting a single picture will become more complex. That picture will have to go through many filters, such as reviews and approvals of representatives who feel that your picture should be public or disregarded. If you take into account how many users are on the internet, this process could take up to 5 to 10 days per post. So your rights are being infringed upon as an American, and that's why I'm against regulating the internet.
Thank you, Ms. Castillo. Are there any other questions? Yes.
This question is for Svetoslav. What major countries censor the internet regularly, or do they regulate it?
The question was, what are the major countries that have internet regulating legislature in place?
The major countries that are regulating the internet and censoring it are mostly centered in the eastern sector of the globe, such as North Korea, China, India, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen.
Thank you, Mr. Grenier. Are there any other questions? Yes.
For Luis, if the United States chose to adopt a policy of internet regulation, do you think it would work?
The question was, if the United States were to adopt internet regulating policies, would it work?
It might work for a little while until people come up with new technologies such as proxies that can easily bypass security or firewalls. What they do is they pretend that they use their IP address from a different country so that the website will think you're from, let's say, Europe when you're actually in the United States. So those are ways that people can get around regulation. So it might slow down the flow of information, but it definitely won't stop it. It might be slightly effective, but there are always ways people get around the system.
Are there any other questions? If not, then thank you everyone for coming out. We hope you can take something away from what we discussed today, and